very, very much. I do welcome you here to this, our November meeting. I want to say thank you for taking your time to be here with us on this, an election day. So you did not have to be here, but you chose to be here, and I am appreciative for that, because that speaks volumes. At this time, I would like to ask our Chair-elect, Ms. Rita Allison, to lead us in the pledge, please.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. At this time, on item 2, we have the approval of the State Board of Education minutes for our October meeting. Is there any objection to approving the minutes as presented? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. If on item 3 you would look, is there any objection to approving the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. We have recognition of visitors, including our news media. We thank you for coming. I've already said that. I mean that. I'm sincere about that. But I believe in an informality of sorts for us to recognize those who have come for first, our visitors. If you're here, to me, you're important enough to be recognized by name. If Jane Massey, for Advocates for Intellectual Freedom, if she would stand, please. Thank you very much. Suzanne Morse, also for the Advocates for Intellectual Freedom. Thank you, ma'am. Heather Mullinax, thank you, an advocate for intellectual freedom. Sherry Oskin, principal of Coastal High. Thank you, ma'am. If I mess up a name, it's on me. It isn't you. Javar Juarez. Javar. I tried. I was giving it that silent Jason. Javar Juarez. Thank you very much, sir. Amanda Fair-Cole from Dover Elementary School. Thank you very much. Jennifer Rainville with our Appleseed Legal Justice System Center. Michael Tom from the Columbia branch of the NAACP. Thank you, sir, for being here. Sarah Zerlo from the ACLU-SC. Marion Jeffcoat from the ACLU-SC. Angel Malone from the LCA. Thank you very much for being here. Bridget Fowler from the LCA. Janelle Rivers from the League of Women Voters of South Carolina. Thank you, ma'am, for being here with us again. Brittany Sumter, also, I think, nope, okay. I just saw a W, and I wasn't sure it was the same thing, so that's okay. Ryan Bailey, SCASA, thank you very much. Debbie Elmore, the South Carolina School Boards Association. I'm going to beat this one up. Anita Glover. Onita. Orita. Ovita.
Ovita.
All right, listen, I'm doing the best. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, I sometimes have to look for lips, and when I can't see them, it's my fault. So thank you, ma'am. All right, Venus Saab, or Sab? Yes, Sab from the NAACP. Annie Mahaffey, thank you. Sebastian Lamarie, did I do that right? Thank you. Taylor Simon from Liberation is Lit. if Taylor, thank you very much, ma'am. For our media that we have today, we have Haley Wentz from Coastal High School. Thank you for being with us today. Javar Juarez,
CUBNSC.
CUBNSC. I just wondered if that was CNBC, and I wasn't sure, so thank you very much. And then Ian Greiner, Post and Courier. All right, how bad did I mess up the name?
It's fine.
That's a nice way of saying you messed it up, but it's okay. All right, we do want to welcome you, and there will be others that we will have for public comment at a later point. I do want to say thank you very much for coming. This month, lots of good things that we have. Election Day today. That's good and bad. I'm going to speak on that in a minute. Veterans Day, which I have a deep and an abiding appreciation for our servicemen and women, of which my dad was one, and my father-in-law was one in the European and one in the Pacific Theater. Thanksgiving. Come on, guys, y'all got some Thanksgiving in you somewhere. All right, so here comes the sermonette. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of all the overt negativism surrounding this year's presidential election. I often lament over the lack of adult, much less responsible role models for our students across the political spectrum. It seems now everyone is about catching the worst in people rather than the best. I remember my fair share of presidential elections, and I have never remembered one quite like this one, and right about now, I would just like it over. I'm actually concerned about our national capacity to unify over anything. We have become so polarized by listening to only those within our approved echo chambers that we have lost the ability to disagree and yet not become disagreeable. Teachers and administrators are fighting an uphill battle given the proclivity of over-the-top reporting and far too much reality television. Entertainment for the sheer joy of a good joke or an affirmation of American virtues is seriously lacking. So welcome to November, with an interest at this moment in the no. I will keep it positive, though. So in keeping with this month's theme of Thanksgiving, I will be most thankful for November, no more political commercials. I'll be the happiest man around to move on with Thanksgiving and Christmas advertising, and I thought I'd never say that. Many of the commercials are so vitriolic and disingenuous, I will breathe a sigh of relief not listening to the cacophony of noise. And if you think about it, cue the Grinch and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and you will hear the Grinch say, noise, noise, noise. No more political signage. I was in Atlanta this weekend for a wedding, and the signage is atrocious. Even in Clinton, where I live, there is so much signage. No more blatant, in-your-face manipulation of one's faith, particularly Christianity, of which I am an embarrassed believer at times. I feel there needs to be a healthy separation of church and state, and I can only suspect our founding fathers are all too aware of the mortal sins committed in the name of Christianity in Europe, up to, including, and even beyond the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. Our forefathers saw the ease at which the most grievous and villainous actions could be committed under the assurance that God is on our side. I understand why Gandhi said what he did. I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ. There are so many other no's I could mention, but I'd rather us to end on a positive note. I believe we can move forward once this election is over, and I think of whoever wins, that even we must be that change. Because those for whom or with whom we are diametrically opposed are still fellow Americans. We are different because this country is full of differences. With the exception of our indigenous peoples, we all came here, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not so. But we are here now. It is hard to not think of the intention behind the commonality to work for good. Regardless, America has so much to offer. Our state board functions not because we are all of one mind, but because we're of one mission: to provide the best public education we can for our students and our teachers. Trust me, we do not all agree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. Miss Weaver and I don't always agree, but we work together in spite of differences. The first time I saw her, she said 95% of the things we will agree on, 5% we may not. But we agree to disagree and not be disagreeable in it. Maybe we can revisit Robert Fulghum's work, now nearly 40 years old, 1986. Anybody ever read All I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? Maybe we can go back to a simpler, more innocent time. Remember his key tenets? Be kind. Clean up after yourself. Take responsibility for your own actions and don't hurt people. And my very favorite, remember to flush. I think that's the first thing we need to do after the election. Flush the bad vibes down the drain and look for the good in those with whom we often disagree most vociferously with. Why? Because bad feelings, bad mojo, bad karma, bad vibes only hurt us. Because your perceptions define your reality. And as Marcel Proust said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. May it be so.
Well, thank you so much, as always, Mr. Chair. I know next year we are going to miss your homilies and really appreciate the thought that you put into those each month. I am so excited this month to be able to recognize some superstars in our midst. So many of you have maybe heard of the Milken Educator Awards. These awards are known as the Oscars of Teaching. And so the Milken Family Foundation only gives out up to 75 of these awards every year. So do the math. There are 50 states. They only give up to 75 awards. We have 2 of those awards this year right here in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So it is just a privilege and a joy to be able to celebrate 2 of our educators who are here today, but just a little bit about the journey that they've been on. When they were named a Milken Educator, they received a $25,000 check, and I checked in with both of them today and understand that both of them used that check to achieve their own little slice of the American dream in purchasing a home. How awesome is that? They also had the opportunity to travel to Los Angeles for a big awards gala, a very intensive 3-day professional development, and they are now lifelong members of the Milken Educator Network and have also been paired with an experienced mentor who is guiding them in their teaching profession. And what I love so much about the spirit of these awards is that they recognize early to mid-career teachers, because this is all about seeing excellence early and cultivating potential and talent and keeping that potential and talent in the classroom. And so our first teacher who we are going to recognize today is Sarah Vicini. She is from Coastal High School. It's a charter school here in South Carolina, And her U.S. history and government students had a higher overall passing percentage than their peers in the state's annual benchmark testing. She engages in hands-on, real-world learning experiences with her students, and you'll appreciate this as a social studies teacher. So her law education class students set up mock trials of current cases to explore all facets of the U.S. legal system. Her American history classes explore the lives of historical figures by actively taking on the roles of various leaders through journaling, performances, and case studies. And in project-based learning fairs like the school's Archer Stock, her psychology students use their creativity to adapt well-known fairy tales using the updated stories to combat mental health stigmas. She's all about embracing the uniqueness of her students. She serves as her school's Title II coordinator, helping to align professional development for her fellow educators there. And she is a graduate of Coastal Carolina University, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Education and her Master's in Education as well. So Sarah, I'd love to invite you to come up to the podium, tell us about your experience, and introduce your guests.
Alrighty, I have nothing prepared. I got this. I do want to take a second to introduce everybody that came with me, because I think their support, both since winning this award, but also in the years preceding it, has been more than I could ever repay them for. So first is my principal, Sherry Oskin, who is the most, I don't even know the proper terminology, but has given me more faith and confidence in myself and my own career path. I can only hope that any educator that is entering this field in the state of South Carolina has a principal that is as encouraging and supportive of my personal professional growth as Ms. Oskin has been, and also me personally. She takes the time to care, and that, I think, is what is going to keep teachers in the classroom. Next to her is Haley Wentz, who was also the realtor that helped me find my home. And she does a lot of our media for our school, so thanks for coming along the drive. And then in the row right behind, we have Angel Vallone, who is the most incredible superintendent for the Limestone Charter Association. I've never in my life experienced as much support from a board as I have under the helm of Angel Vallone. She's incredible. And then Bridget Fowler, right next to her, used to serve on the Coastal High School board and now serves on the Limestone board as well. All of these women are just everything I think our education system needs. But to talk about the Milken Educator Award for a second, I think the work that they do is something that we don't see enough of on a day-to-day, and that's celebrating the work of our teachers. I think we have shifted a lot in such a positive direction of really taking into account the mental health of our students and making sure that they are doing well, not just academically, but emotionally. And I think sometimes we forget that our teachers also have that same kind of baggage. And I think the Milken Educator Award helps shine a light on some of the work that's being done by those educators, and to remind them that it's okay to check in with yourself. And once they've done that, we've been able to take those skills back into our own schools. And I can only hope that I leave a little bit of happiness and joy behind for days when things get tough, because, you know, it's education. It's always tough. But I want to thank you guys for having us. This meant more to us than you will ever really know. And I am privileged to be a teacher at Coastal High School, and will be there for many years to come.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And our friend Angel Malone actually serves as a great bridge from charter school world over to Orangeburg, which is where we are going next, because she actually started a charter school in Orangeburg back in the day. And so now we are going to transition to Ms. Amanda Fair-Coles, who is a teacher at Dover Elementary School there in Orangeburg County. And Amanda began her teaching career as an instructional assistant, and when she realized her calling, and I want to emphasize it is a calling, to enter the field of teaching, she went back to school to complete her education degree. She has what is called a looped classroom, which means her kindergarten students continue with her in first grade. And from what I've heard from parents there, they want her for second grade and third grade and fourth grade. So she may never escape those students, not that she would want to. Her academic results speak volumes as her students meet their learning objectives and, on a whole, score proficient or higher on the school's iReady diagnostic assessments. Her students hone comprehension skills by building on prior knowledge, asking challenging questions, communicating effectively, and reading with one another. And her focus on early literacy is something that I think is just such an example for the entire state. She brings her talents to the school's Saturday Academy and summer school classes, programs that are designed to eliminate learning gaps. And she also is a strong partner with her parents, providing them with valuable strategies for modeling good behavior and life skills at home. She has also, in her spare time, spearheaded professional development on creating success criteria for her fellow teachers and integrating high-quality instructional materials. She serves as a certified mentor for new teachers, inspiring colleagues to earn their full teaching certification. She has a Bachelor in Arts in Sociology from Claflin and a Master of Arts from SC State, which she earned in 2018. And on a personal note, I just want to add that she is a songbird. When I got to visit Dover Elementary School, she was leading the elementary school in a song that I believe she had written, and from what I understand, she routinely creates songs to help students with their reading and math skills. And actually goes to church with one of our employees here, Virgie Chambers, who is one of our deputy superintendents. So she let the cat out of the bag a little bit on that singing. But Amanda, I would love for you to come up and introduce your guest and share a little bit about your Milken journey.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm so incredibly grateful for the opportunity to be here today, and I am glad that I listened to my calling. So I do want to introduce my guest who helped push me into where I am today, Mrs. Sylvia Williams, my wonderful principal. And under her leadership, I grew professionally as well. But she did show a concern for me as a person, and I am forever grateful for that. When I met her, I shared with her my intentions of becoming a teacher. In undergrad, I graduated with my sociology degree because I was ready to get out of school at that time. It's not an easy journey with the various tests that are required. So I said, well, let me do this and I'll come back to it. And she realized that I became sort of comfortable with where I was at the time as an instructional assistant or behavior management facilitator. And she said, but there's more. You know, you share your dreams with me, so I need to make some changes that will allow you to achieve those dreams. And I'm so grateful for Mrs. Williams for giving me that motivation, the boost that I needed to be where I am today. Had she not done that, I'm not sure how much longer it would have taken me, but I'm grateful. I have wonderful support system, my entire village, everyone has been supportive and proud of me. And to the Milken Family Foundation, I am forever grateful for them noticing the hard work that I put into my students' education. I put my heart into it because I care about them and their families' success. And so every day I give them the best that I have because I want to see them grow. I want them to realize their potential as young learners. And there's nothing they can't do if they're not exposed to it. So I often like to extend their learning, extend their thinking as a primary teacher. And I do have that group now in second grade. And yes, I have them, but they also get to experience another teacher because we're doing a pilot run of being departmentalized in second grade. So I am, I'm grateful to be a part of this, and this award has really refueled my motivation. It makes me want to do even greater. It makes me want to become a better educator for my students. And I'm so grateful that someone noticed the value of what we do as educators. And I am certainly blessed to be an educator in South Carolina with God's precious gifts, his beautiful children.
Amen.
Thank you.
And very, very quickly, just to build a bridge from that into the last part of my report. So Principal Williams, who is here with us today, I told her a little bit ahead of the presentation how we were going to be kind of flowing through the agenda, and shared with her that I wanted to tell the board a little bit about Pinecrest Elementary School, which is where we released the new state report cards just a few weeks ago. I think, in fact, the week after our last meeting. And she shared with me that Principal Jacks at Pinecrest Elementary School was part of a cohort of principal leaders that she attended. And he had actually followed up with her afterwards. He looked up the data of every single principal who was there. And he called her and he said, "Did you know your school, Dover Elementary, is the 6th highest growing elementary school in the state?" Which I think that deserves a round of applause. They have gone in 2 years from unsatisfactory to excellent. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I think that speaks so highly to the power of strong, committed principal leadership. We have heard that from both of our teachers today, that their principals set the tone and the culture in those schools. And so I wanted to tell you just briefly as I conclude my report a little bit about Pinecrest Elementary School. You'll see on the screen here the student population demographics for their 3rd to 5th grade students that take the SC Ready. And so you'll notice that it is a predominantly black and brown school. I will also add that it is 87% poverty in a rural community. Let's look real quick at their scores here. Now, I'll send this chart to you afterwards. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but in the 23 to 24 bar, you will see that is the growth that Pinecrest achieved for their students between those 2 school years. And that little dotted line you see is the state average. So that school is consistently outperforming state averages across all grades and all subjects. What an amazing achievement. In fact, they are the 2nd highest performing elementary school in the entire state of South Carolina. Wow. Second only by 2 points to Augusta Circle in Greenville. Wow. For any of you who know the Greenville, it's just that's an apple and oranges comparison there. And I think that this is just such a powerful picture in data of the fact that every single student in South Carolina can learn. Every single student in South Carolina has capacity and capability. When we align our expectations as adults to hold them to high expectations, and when we provide strong support to our teachers to make sure that they have the tools that they need in the classroom to get those kids what they need. Mm-hmm. And so it is just such a joy to have our Dover Elementary family here to be able to celebrate what's happening in Pinecrest. And I'll close by just showing a video of Principal Barry Jacks. So as part of the report card rollout, we were able to partner with the South Carolina State Chamber of Commerce, again, to give a $25,000 check to inaugurate what we're calling the Principals of Excellence Award. Because as important as it is for us to recognize our classroom teachers, and that is absolutely vital, we have got to recognize the strong principal leadership that recruits and retains those teachers in the classroom. And so Principal Jacks is just an old ball coach. He doesn't pretend to be anything other. And when we went down to do the report card announcement, I really wish y'all could have been there because I didn't know if I was going to church or if I was in school. He gave a stem winder about 15 minutes talking about what he's learned in his career over the course of his lifetime. And he said at the end of the day, success in education comes down to 2 components, time and people. How are you spending your time and how are you supporting your people? Mm-hmm. And he said, I just keep it simple. He's like, I'm an old ball coach. And he said, if you told me that Dabo Sweeney wasn't watching practice every day, I'd tell you, well, he's not a very good coach. And so he said, you know what I do all day? I watch practice. He said, I'm in those classrooms. He's like, I'm not scaring my teachers, I'm supporting my teachers, making sure they have what they need. I was talking to some of the APs there at Pinecrest, and one of them shared with me, she's like, we're all making the rounds first thing in the morning saying, okay, what do you need? You need copies made? I'll go make your copies for you. Everything to support that teacher, because that teacher is the magic that makes learning happen in those classrooms. And so I think when our administrative staff remember that they're there to serve, not to be served, it makes a huge, huge difference. And so that's the message that I want you to hear directly from Coach Jacks.
Coach, on behalf of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce Excellence in Education Foundation, we are giving you a check for $25,000.
That's as much emotion as you'll ever
Me
see
to
here.
be there to witness this inaugural award and recognition of a principal, it was pretty special. He's a preacher's son, and so kind of hearing him talk, you couldn't help but feel the energy of his leadership style.
I love the way y'all do that. Are they precious or not?
Nobody can do it like Barry does it, but you take what he does and mold it to what your style is, and you can be successful with this. As simple as he says, there's nothing to it, but there's a heart to do.
I love my job. I love coming to school every day. I love the kids. And I mean, working under Mr. Jacks is just so easy. He has high expectations, but everybody wants to meet those expectations because his leadership and his respect and his love for the school and love for the kids and for his faculty and staff is so strong.
Accountability. It's like holding us accountable for what we do. That was something that I wanted, like as an educator when I taught him. I wanted a challenge. Someone who's going to challenge me as an educator and push me to be my best. And so holding me accountable is what I've learned. And then now as an instructional coach, holding his teachers accountable, the students accountable. So that was the biggest difference and something that is always pushing us to be our best.
I love the way that you guys are quiet in these hallways. Leading is about serving. It is not about being an authoritarian and making sure, it is about serving. The more that you serve and the more that you look for ways to serve, then the better leader you're going to be. It was a surprise, kind of caught me off guard, made me feel uncomfortable a little bit because I recognized, man, this thing is not just about me. I actually got to looking at it, Derek, and I was thinking about how do I divide this up. By the time I got through dividing it up, nobody was going to get very much. So, but we decided let's see how we can utilize this.
So, Mr. Chair, with that concludes my report.
And that, again, reaffirms the fact that we, as Americans, have opportunities, should we put aside differences, to focus on the mission that all students can learn, and we just need to be sources of inspiration behind that. So thank you, and at this point, I will turn it over to the parliamentarian comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. It's the first Tuesday of November in an even-numbered year. And so I just want to clear the air and address what is on all of our minds, and that is none other than State Board of Education Governance, BCBD. I know that you all came here thinking of that. You'll notice on your agenda every month, item number Roman numeral X. The consent agenda. Our governance, BCBD, your governance, allows for what's called the consent agenda. The consent agenda is regularly utilized by the board's various committees, and at the committee level, items are approved and then placed on the consent agenda, and then all consent items can be approved in one vote at the full board meeting. And as is the case, as you all are aware, any board member may object to an item being placed on the consent agenda during the applicable committee report that comes up every month. And so in conclusion, that consent agenda, I get questions about it a good bit. And it is an efficient mechanism regularly utilized by our committees and by the full board. And thus concludes my report.
Right, thank you very, very much. Mr. Tyler, you keep me straight. All right, speaking of which, as we now move into our part with public comments, we have 9 people, and at this point, we normally allocate 5 minutes. If we did do that, we would then cut it after 6. So I would request of the board that we make a motion to amend this public comment time to 3 minutes. There are 9 people. 9 times 3 is 27. It keeps us within the time of the 30-minute period or window. So would there be a motion on the part of a member to amend public comment time from 5 to 3 minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Allison, second.
All right, thank you. We have Ms. Allison seconding it. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much for the accommodation of this. And then if we could, please, I will just call you up. Dr. Hanley, if you would, 3 minutes. That would assist us in giving everyone here the chance. So Mona Fleming, please, from the Pendleton Area Advocates for Intellectual Freedom. If Ms. Fleming would come forward, please.
Yes. Good afternoon. On this election day, I share this quote from Louis Brandeis, who was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1916. He said the most important political office is that of the private citizen. I come here today as a private citizen who served 36 years as a public school teacher and principal in this, my native state of South Carolina. I'm very concerned about our State Department of Education and State Board of Education's decision-making. Your decisions in the past months have many contributing factors, but let me start with something I think is a root problem, which boils down to one word, a controversial word. The word is woke. This one word is part of African American culture, and let's remember that African American history is an integral part of the United States of America. Yet now this one word has become derogatory slang in our divisive and pervasive society. According to the NAACP, in 1940, the Negro mine workers, when advocating against discriminatory pay, issued this statement: "We were asleep, but we will stay woke from now on." Woke was used by many African American activists to signify wake up. Now, decades later, racists misdefine the word as they try to stop the teaching of certain concepts related to race, gender, racism, and privilege. My concern about the weaponization of the word woke lies right here in the State Department of Education and in this very board. In your favor to vote no on Regulation 43-170, in the stopping of the AP African American History course in our high schools, the banning of books in our schools, and in aligning with PragerU. And also in my embarrassment and concern after hearing our Superintendent of Education state at last year's Moms for Liberty, oh, that's an oxymoron, National Summit. It's time we stop this woke agenda and get back to the basics. Listen, we moved away from the BSAP program years ago. For those who are not as old as I am, BSAP was an acronym for Basic Skills Assessment Program. It saddens me that our education system is going backwards. So yes, private citizen that I am, I'm very worried about the bleak state of affairs in our educational decision-making. Notice I said decision-making. I didn't talk about these award-winning teachers at state level. We need to be woke, to be awakened, to wake up and respect and honor the diversity of our schools, the diversity in literature, and in teaching accurate history.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Fleming. We have now Kathy Sparace. I hope I'm right on that.
Yeah, you are. Thank you
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
much. I'm a retired ACCU certified university and college professor. I live in Pendleton, South Carolina, in Anderson County. I have two major concerns about the PraterU material. The PraterU Foundation is a non-profit advocacy and media organization. It is not a credentialed teaching. Their material should be excluded, I believe, from the classroom for the following reasons, especially from the alignment point of view. PraterU did not align some of the material to the grade subject matter teaching objectives. It's lacking because teaching objectives are built with scaffolding of knowledge, building blocks within them, where a major concept, when it's introduced, has very much factual supporting it. PraterU as well was not accurate with its material. An example of not being accurate is in the African energy poverty video, where they bring up energy reliability and they talk about energy produced from coal, natural gas, power, and say that the types of the energy sources are not, quote, reliable if it is from solar and from wind. Reliable energy, according to the government side, is the result of energy infrastructure. It's not a type of energy that can withstand and quickly recover from the typical grid work down failure we saw in the hurricane. They're challenging for remote rural access of Africa is more due to limited access to centralized energy grid work. So they're also, since 2018, PraterU's videos are not accurate. They've been proven misleading by 3 major news organizations, Rutgers, Weather Channel, Climate Feedback, and so on, especially concerning nuclear power. Back to the alignment. The objectives that I'm speaking about, 3.31, 3.23 ER, indicator is talking about, I'm going to say the weather, climate. And what PraterU has done is leave out the indicator interpretation where it is supposed to talk about a decision-making factors of the weather with the food, clothing, shelter around the world, and to consider various threats to further things, for example, the hurricanes, wildfires, and so on, have on human actions which affect human vulnerability. PraterU video in the Africa doesn't focus on that at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. All right, Javar Juarez. Javar, darn. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
We're never going to let you privatize our schools, Ellen. And Richland 1, you keep messing with Richland 1, it's going to end your career. Dear Superintendent Ellen Weaver, I'm writing to formally put you on notice of my intent to file a claim against your surety bond in the event that any books are banned from South Carolina's public schools. This action is taken in light of your duties as a constitutional officer, bound under oath to uphold the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the South Carolina Constitution. As citizens of the United States and residents of South Carolina, we hold a social compact that is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States of America. This document, often referred to as For America rather than Of America, represents the union of free, independent, sovereign states bound in common purpose. Each state, as a republic, has its own constitution, further underscoring the importance of protecting the rights and liberties of its residents. The American people, as beneficiaries of this constitutional contract, are entitled to freedom of speech and expression, including the right to access diverse information and ideas. This right extends to our public institutions, including schools and libraries. The act of banning books violates the First Amendment, as it restricts the right to receive information and ideas. a right that stands as a corollary to freedom of speech. Any attempt to remove materials based on disagreement with the ideas or perspectives they contain constitutes viewpoint discrimination, an act that is prohibited under the First Amendment. The Constitution is more than a guiding document. It is a binding contract between we, the people, and our government officials. As a public servant, you have a duty to serve in fidelity to this contract. Your official bond, a public official bond, exists to ensure faithful performance of your duties with integrity and impartiality. Should you, in your capacity as state superintendent or any board of education official, move to ban books, it will be viewed as a breach of your duty to uphold the Constitution and protect the rights of students, educators, and citizens. Under South Carolina law, Title 59, Chapter 3, as outlined in the requirements for the state superintendent of education, you are obligated to provide a bond with sufficient surety to guarantee the faithful and impartial execution of your duties. This bond, along with the oath of office, serves as a legal safeguard for the public against rights violations by state officials. Any act to limit the public's access to information, particularly through censorship in schools, will constitute a breach of your bond's conditions and an infringement of constitutional rights. In the event that books are removed or banned from public school libraries in South Carolina due to content-based objections, I will move forward with a claim against your bond. Such actions not only violate our First Amendment rights, but also undermine the principle of an informed and educated public, a cornerstone of our democratic society. Who is the attorney?
All right. Thank you, sir.
Oh, well, fine. It's no rise for you.
I don't believe you're allowed to approach the dais.
Keep messing with Richland one.
Just thank you, ma'am. Mary Foster, please. F-A-B-B. Mary Foster. Okay. Josh Malkin.
Good afternoon. Happy Election Day. Who should I hand materials to distribute to y'all? All right.
I wouldn't bring it.
And Mr. Chair, I believe Ms. Foster is stuck in traffic, so she may be joining us shortly. Good afternoon. My name is Josh Malkin. I'm a lawyer with and advocacy director for the American Civil Liberties Union of South Carolina. I'm also a former educator. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. As a new educator, I was quick to learn the importance of implementing consistent expectations. When you set a rule, that rule must be applied to all students in the same manner, regardless of how much you like or dislike a certain student. Just ask Justin. This is fairness, and as educators and parents in the room know, high school students are constantly on the lookout for unfairness. This department and board need to act with similar consistency when applying Regulation 43-170. Failure to do so creates the chaos, confusion, and chilling effect that I believe this policy was created to intend. The sheet being passed around contains which textual activities are banned under the language of the regulation, as well as text excerpts from 1984. Despite the department's assertions to the contrary, passages from 1984 clearly violate the language of the regulation. Voting to retain 1984 creates a vague and unpredictable standard that is impossible for educators and administrators to meet. I am not advocating that 1984 be banned across South Carolina. I believe censorship is dangerous both for our students and for our democracy. Rather, I strongly recommend that this board amend the regulation so that it considers the value of a work in its entirety. I realize not every lawyer gets 45 minutes to address the board, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. There's no questions at this point, but what I was going to say is stick around. I think there will be some subcommittee conversation. So thank you very much, Mr. Malkin.
Pleasure.
Susie Long.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susie Long. I'm Professor Emeritus from the University of South Carolina. I've been a classroom teacher and then a teacher educator for the past 36 years. I have for many years been a leader in one of the foremost literacy education associations in the States, the National Council of Teachers of English. I am extremely concerned about state control over curriculum and instructional materials, and I'm going to try to express a few of those concerns today as they relate to the Instructional Materials Review Board. I imagine that those of you with experience as teachers are also frustrated by this process. The arguments for and against particular books are critical, but it is the intention behind the Instructional Review Board and its processes that are at the root of the problems as I see them. I watched last week as members of the review board, who had read only a paragraph or two from each of the books in question, made decisions without the opportunities to think for themselves, but by assuming that staff recommendations based on subjective interpretations of the regulations and varying from book to book. I urge you to see the absurdity of this process. If we are honest, we have to admit that it is a well-planned, slippery slope to ban books in which students can examine the issues they face every day, or books in which they can be validated for who they are or for what they worry about. It's a slippery slope to banning books and censoring curriculum for younger children as well, to ensure that trans, gay, or lesbian students never see themselves or their families in the books they read, or to ensure that students lose the opportunity to read whole histories, particularly of Black and brown people. At the very least, the process is consuming, extremely time-consuming, and impossible to sustain. But most important, it's devoid of the wisdom of teachers, librarians, and students, and unnecessary because of the processes that those educators and professionals already have in place. It's absolutely necessary that anyone making a decision about a book has read the whole book. That anyone making decisions about instructional materials has extensive and current experience as a classroom teacher, understands and teaches in the context in which those materials are being used, and most important, knows the kids in those classrooms, knows their needs, their worries, their fears, their vulnerabilities, their pressures, and has sensitivity and knowledge to know how to address those needs. Who has that knowledge? Teachers and librarians in school. The way the regulation is written and the criteria used to guide it do not allow for this depth of thoughtful, contextualized examination.
Thank you very, very much.
The kind of thought that teachers and librarians already put into their choice of books and materials every day. Trust them.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Steve Newsom.
Good afternoon, Chair O'Shields, Superintendent Weaver, members of the board. Thanks to everybody who wore red for ed today. My name is Steve Newsom, and I was a South Carolina English teacher for 16 years. I emailed the members of the board some detailed concerns about the process of last week's Instructional Materials Review Committee. Thank you to those who took the time to read and or respond, and I also gave paper copies in case anybody didn't get that. I won't rehash that entire email, but it bears repeating that while I believe the regulation's original language is flawed, I also believe the process of interpreting it has demonstrated viewpoint discrimination, as we've heard from others. Subcommittee Chair Hanley went into the meeting explicitly planning to retain 3 classic novels. As Chair Hanley told the State Gazette days before the subcommittee meeting, quote, "If people think these are going to get removed from South Carolina schools if they're reasonable books, why don't we look at them now and say, yeah, they're fine?" This intention to retain the classics is reflected in guidance the subcommittee received from an unnamed department employee who provided detailed lists of specific quotes from the 8 non-classics and no specific evidence at all from the classics. Therefore, the subcommittee was not able to consider any language from those 3 texts. As Mr. Cathcart stated, the committee was not required to read any of the books at all, so members may very well have voted to retain or remove books based only on the selections or lack of selections made by the department employee. In at least some of these selections, every quote included also appears on the ideologically biased Moms for Liberty affiliated website Book Close. The board can make this process more fair by allocating more time for public to provide information to the subcommittee and more time for the subcommittee to consider that information. Depending, as Mr. Cathcart stated the subcommittee did, entirely on the opinions of one government employee, is bound to introduce inappropriate viewpoint bias into the process no matter who that one employee is. I certainly wouldn't want that job. After all, legal obscenity is so subjective that even the courts have, in their wisdom, often declined to try to create a fixed definition. Conservative Justice Potter Stewart famously stated in considering a case about whether a film was, quote, obscene, quote, "I shall not today attempt further to define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced within that shorthand description, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligibly doing so. But I know it when I see it, and the motion picture involved in this case is not that." The board can also make the regulation more fair by amending the language to include considerations of artistic, scientific, historical, or literary merit, as the state law from which the regulation derives its definition of sexual content already does. In fact, in retaining 1984, for example, a book which clearly contains sexual content, as defined in the regulation, and removing other books with similar content, the subcommittee or the unnamed staff member have already made a kind of decision about literary merit. Without fairer procedures, the subcommittee becomes a kind of kangaroo court for books, which imperils the constitutional rights of our students to receive information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Laura Haverkamp, please.
Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Haverkamp, a 28-year educator with experience in Department of Defense in Virginia, in New York City schools, and in South Carolina. Also a National Board certified teacher. I just want to start with 43% of young adults, according to the CDC, are sexually active, those between the ages of 15 and 18. I defended the A Court of Thorn and Roses series in the curriculum hearing, and I just want to bring up a particular point. The main character, Fair, recognizes tyranny in those who claim moral authority in the book. But those moral authorities try to control and oppress vulnerable minorities by controlling information, particularly access to the library. Adolescence is a time of very strong emotions, of learning and growth. Fiction is one of the best ways that young people can learn to process some of those strong emotions. You can pause, you can digest, you can discuss, you can reflect by reading. You can experience things by proxy. Difficult, scary, ambiguous, uplifting, even a little sexy, by proxy, where it is safe. I feel as though this committee is looking to solve a problem that doesn't exist. People are calling librarians sex abusers. So I did a database search in the Discus database, newspaper database. I searched for child sex abuse and church, where I came up with 1,088 hits about child sex abuse and church. I searched for child sex abuse and librarian and came up with one. Your librarians are not the problem. Librarians are highly trained. I teach collection development. They go to school and get master's degrees that take 2 years to obtain. So they have time to think and digest. They have academic rigor, and they care about intellectual freedom. So I want to let this school board, the state board know that librarians and folks in South Carolina, we will not go gentle into that good night. We will rage against the dying of the light of intellectual freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Patrick Kelly, PSTA.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Weaver, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. Just want to put two things on your radar this afternoon. Number one, you should all be receiving a copy of our 2025 policy agenda. Wanted to make sure that you are aware of it. You're actually the first people that have it. And it is reflective of the largest group of teacher voices in the state. Every policy you see in that agenda was derived from the voice of South Carolina educators. And while a lot of it is directed toward the work of the legislature, a lot of the items crosswalk with your work as a state board. You'll see the acronym FOCUS on the front, and it aligns to what Superintendent Weaver said about what great schools have. Full staffing, optimization of time and resources, comprehensive supports for students, uniform opportunities to learn, and a safe and secure learning environment. So a lot of the policies in there in areas such as class size, grading practices, student discipline, standards writing, and our defined minimum program directly intersect with your work as a board, and PSTA would welcome the opportunity to have conversation with any of you on any items you see in that agenda that resonate with you. The second item I would briefly touch is in regard to the book review process. I just want to encourage the board to allow what has occurred with this first round of book review to be the exception and not the rule. I listened in last week, and I appreciate what Chair Hanley explained to the Instructional Material Review Committee as a desire to reduce burden on local school districts by addressing books that had been brought up frequently during public comment around the development of the regulation. I understand and I appreciate and I applaud that desire. And I know it's fully within the board's purview to preemptively review books. But I would encourage the rule to be to allow challenges to instructional material to originate at the local level for two reasons. Number one, the majority of these materials are still purchased with local funds. As a result, I believe that local voices should be driving the start of a conversation. And second, and most importantly, I think one of the strongest parts of this regulation, and it's a credit to this board that you included it, is a requirement for an individual with a concern about an instructional material to make a, quote, good faith effort to talk to the teacher, the principal, the school, prior to engaging the review process. To the chair's homily earlier, I think part of why as a society we've forgotten how to disagree disagreeably is because we don't talk to each other anymore. We talk about each other, we talk at each other, but we don't talk to and with each other. And while it is hard, I can tell you from 20 years in the classroom, it is hard to have a conversation with a parent who doesn't see eye to eye with me. I value those opportunities, and I find that it leads to a better outcome. So moving forward, I strongly encourage the board to default to the local voice driving this process for no other reason so that we can learn again as a society how to talk with each other instead of going beyond each other. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we will now move into our state board items. You will notice that the Policy and Legislative Committee did not meet. We tried not to have some meetings in an effort to get people the opportunity to vote if they could. So many of the meetings at that point, the Policy and Legislative Committee did not meet. The Educator Professions Committee did not meet. However, the Standards Learning and Accountability Committee did meet, and at such time I would like to recognize Ms. Lynn to present the Educator Professions Committee report.
Thank you, sir. The Standards Learning and Accountability Committee met and heard two action items. Proposed amendments to Regulations 43-262, Assessment Program, first reading, and the adoption list of formative interim assessments. Action Item 1, proposed amendments to Regulations 43-262, Assessment Program. The first reading was approved to be presented to the full board. During the meeting, Dr. Hanley noted that the address for submitting comments to the regulation needs to be updated to reflect the new address of the South Carolina Department of Education. Action Item 2, the adoption list of formative interim assessment was approved and placed on the consent agenda. The committee did not hear any information items. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Lynn. The committee report stands as a motion. It does not require a second. Is there any discussion? All right. At that point, since that's the case, doesn't require a second, but we do need to vote on that. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries. At this point, the Instructional Materials Review Committee, as has been mentioned, did meet. I do recognize Dr. Hanley to present the inaugural report of this subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, as has been mentioned multiple times today, we did meet. Our first meeting of the Instructional Materials Review Committee, and this is the first report of the review committee to the full board. Since this is a new committee, I thought it would be helpful to share a summary of the committee's process and decisions. I don't want to leave anything out of this, any of the important details, so I would like to read my report. I want to begin my report by first reviewing the process of how we got here as a board and the Instructional Materials Review Committee. The State Board of Education unanimously passed Regulation 43-170, and it took effect on the 1st of August. The Instructional Material Review Committee governance passed at our last board meeting, October 8th. The review committee was established, and as chair, I sought a list of initial reviews and asked the department staff to provide recommendations to the committee on these materials. The review committee met on October 31st, yes, Halloween, via WebEx, and we heard public comments, both written and in person. We received staff reports on each of the books under review. We deliberated regarding 11 books, culminating in 10 reports and recommendations before the board today. These were provided to the full board on Friday afternoon via email, and you have a copy of those in front of you right now. The materials on our committee agenda were drawn from materials that were frequently mentioned in public comments at our full board meetings and were referenced in many materials on the agenda, mentioned in many emails to the board while we were in the process of passing Regulation 43-170. Some of the materials on the agenda had been challenged in districts across South Carolina. The review committee took the step of preemptively reviewing these materials in order to ease the burden on individual district boards and to provide clarity to districts and librarians as they evaluate whether or not materials are, quote, age and developmentally appropriate, end quote. At the onset, I think it's important to clarify what we are and what we are not doing with these recommendations. We are not talking about student speech or expression. Instead, we're talking about materials that are selected by public employees as part of their public duties available in public school buildings to be used or provided to minors in the context of a governmental program that has very specific purpose: the academic instruction and college and career readiness. The selection, purchase, curation, and use of these books is not private speech. It is government speech. The review committee reviewed and deliberated on 11 books. We unanimously recommended removal of 7 of those books. We unanimously recommended retaining 3 of those books. 1 book was postponed for further discussion at a later date. The materials we recommended to be removed included passages which you all received on Friday. Each report and recommendation has an attachment with excerpts which clearly contain sexual conduct as defined in South Carolina Code Section 16-15-305C1. Materials that include passages that contain descriptions of, quote, sexual conduct are not, quote, age and developmentally appropriate for any student in public school system as clearly laid out in Regulation 43-170. I haven't read the entire book of all of these books, but the regulation does not require committee members to read the entire book, although some of these books I have read all of them and enjoyed some of them. It requires a review of the materials to determine whether or not the material contains descriptions or depictions of, quote, sexual conduct. No one needs to read an entire Playboy magazine cover to cover to decide that it contains pornography. The same is true here. Even one or two inappropriate passages specifically describing sex acts are sufficient to determine that a book is not one that we need to buy or to display with taxpayer funds and ultimately provide to minors. There's no question that's true of these books that we have recommended for removal. As is included in your materials for today's meeting, the 7 books the committee recommended removing are Damsel by Elena Arnold, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Mist and Fury by the same author, A Court of Thorns and Roses, same author, A Court of Wings and Ruin, same author, and Normal People by Sally Rooney. These 7 books were not close calls. Although even one instance of inappropriate sexual content would call for removal or restrictions, these books each contained multiple express, extensive, graphic, or detailed descriptions of sexual conduct. Examples from each book can be found in the exhibits attached to the review committee's reports and recommendations. I will not recite them here. It would be rather embarrassing to do so. The committee also recommends that 3 materials be retained: To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, and 1984 by George Orwell. The first 7 books illustrate what the regulation forbids, but these 3 illustrate what it permits. Although there are passages in these materials that do discuss romance, kissing, or even make oblique references to sexual activity, none of these passages rise to the level of a description of sexual conduct. That's why the review committee recommends we retain and not remove these materials. It is important then to understand what a description is. A description of something is different from merely mentioning it or acknowledging that it exists or that it happened. We know from the dictionary definitions of description, such as the Cambridge Dictionary, a description is something that tells you what something is or someone is like. The Collins Dictionary, a description of someone or something is an account which explains what they are or what they look like. And Merriam-Webster says a description is a discourse intended to give a mental image of something experienced. We also know from common usage that the description requires a degree of explanatory detail. For example, when we hear that the police have released a description of the gunman, that means more than just a statement that there is a criminal with a gun. A description of the gunman means that the police have provided some explanatory details about him: his height, weight, age, build, hair color, clothes he's wearing, other characteristics, the vehicle he may be driving, and any other specific identifying features. The description helps those who read form a mental image of the gunman. Or take the Gettysburg Address. It acknowledges that a battle had occurred and that many Americans were slain, but no one would say that it provides a description of the Battle of Gettysburg. Together, these definitions, as well as the common usage, mean that a description of something includes some degree of detail and explanation that is expressly and squarely set before the reader. The thing described is occurring, quote, on stage, squarely before the audience, not, quote, off stage, or in a prequel that we have not seen or read. The difference is perfectly illustrated by the books before us today. Seven of them include express, detailed explanations of sexual conduct and sexual acts. In other words, descriptions. In contrast, the 3 books we recommended the board retain do not have that sort of express or detailed explanation and discussion. For example, a central plot point of To Kill a Mockingbird is that a black man has been wrongly accused of rape, but the alleged crime occurred off stage. As the readers know that it didn't actually happen, even in the fictional world of the book, but it is not in the reader's view. When Scout asks her father, Atticus, what rape is, he recognizes that she is too young to be given any express details, so he tells her that rape is carnal knowledge of a female by force and without consent. That statement lacks the explanatory detail, length, and express discussion needed to rise to the level of an inappropriate description of sexual conduct. It acknowledges and it even defines something without truly describing it. Similar reasoning explains the retention of Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure we've all read it. I certainly did in high school. Shakespeare's classic text mentions kissing, but it does not fall within the statutory definition of sexual conduct. Juliet longs for Romeo to, quote, leap to these arms. And she notes that even in darkest night, lovers can see to do their amorous rites. But those lines are nowhere close to the type of explanation, detail, narrative, or characterization to reach the level of a description of sexual conduct. A person who did not already know what sex was would not deduce it by reading those lines. Similarly, the debated passages in 1984, awesome book by the way, are too brief, too generic, and too nonspecific to constitute a description of sexual conduct. I have read the book. There are a handful of places, acknowledgments that even in that fictional world, sex, sexual assault, prostitution, and pornography does exist. But those acknowledges usually a single sentence, sometimes 2, but none of them include the level of express discussion, explanation, and detail to be a description of sexual conduct. There is one other book the committee reviewed, Crank by Ellen Hopkins. The committee postponed for further discussion at a later date. After careful consideration of these factors and passages raised from the materials before the committee, we submit these reports and recommendations to the board. The review committee was unanimous in the actions that we took, so we placed our recommendations of all 10 of these materials on the consent agenda. And that's my report, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Is there any question or discussion for the committee, and that this is our first meeting of hearing anything about this? Well, I'll go with one. Help me, because I can be wrong. Trust me. My initial understanding of this reg, from my understanding of it as we passed it, was, in my mind, could be wrong, in my mind, more of a bottom-up approach. Districts dealing with board-related school board related concerns, that being then dealt with at the local level, and a parent not finding relief or a desired outcome, then could submit it. I'm trying to reconcile what my understanding was of a bottoms-up approach with us sort of serving in an appeals with that of the way that this one operated. So am I making any sense? All right, so I'm just trying very hard to understand, because I wasn't part of the committee. I wasn't part of that committee. I wanted people on the committee who had a wide variety of that. People were then nominated, people were selected, people were chosen. Ms. Collier, I'm sorry, I've heard you weren't able to get on the committee call because you were there, but you couldn't.
She was actually attending, and because of difficulties with the electrons, we were not able to see her. We didn't realize she was on until afterwards.
Okay, and that's fine. And again, I'm just seeking clarification. I'm just, because for me, in looking at it and in hearing Mr. Coleman, my understanding was it would be similar to a teacher licensure case, and it would be brought forward to us. And that's all that I'm trying to seek clarification on, because the dissonance is it top down, is it bottom up, is it both, is it neither?
Mr. Chair, if I could, and
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart, you may need to assist me if I say anything that's inaccurate. But so, yes, that is the intent, that the majority of the reviews would come to the committee via the, as you put it, bottom-up review. However, the board and the committee does have the opportunity to, by first review, go and get materials that are either problematic or in many boards have been challenged by lots of boards and make that easier for them. But also in this first review, this was, I'm sure you've heard it, I've certainly heard it from lots of people around the state, that the local districts did not feel like they had enough detail to be able to implement this properly, and they were looking for further guidance. And so part of the initial review was, let's try to give them the idea of how we went about the review, and hopefully that would provide some clarity to local districts. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman O'Shields as well. And I believe you'll find it.
Chairman's up here. Exactly.
I'm sorry?
Nothing, just don't worry about it.
Yes, sir. I believe, too, you'll find kind of in the regulation the board passes under Section 6B specifically. So in addition, the state board may, but is not required to, of its own volition and on its own initiative, make determinations regarding the educational suitability. So it is able to take those cases up. Similar, I believe, to kind of the educator licensure piece. If something was seen in the news, for instance, that investigation could be initiated by the board. So it's that same kind of power. So that's kind of where the committee itself found that power.
Because it didn't strike me when we did it to be that way. And I was looking at it, and therefore it wasn't at all, I mean, like I say, I'm sorry, I couldn't quite make the meeting.
For sure.
It was just I guess I was a little confused. I don't know, and maybe y'all were all just fine with it. I just didn't know. I wasn't sure, and that's all.
Mr. Chair, my question is, if we start at the top with the board reviewing the books, who would appeal to us? If we are supposed to be who they come to appeal to, but we're starting at the top. So what would somebody do if they don't agree with the decisions that we just can't? I think the process that we take the books through, we vote, I'm okay with that. But I'd like to see that at the district level as well, so that they can follow the regulations that we put in place. That had to be apparent and, in so many books and the pages and all of that. But my question is, now what if someone doesn't agree with, we followed the process before the local districts followed the process, so how do you appeal?
I think that's an excellent question. I think the way the regulation was set is this board kind of does make that final decision. So that board could either make that final decision at the beginning of the process or at the end. There's also a way for a local board, if they wished not to take up a material, to directly appeal and ask this board to take it up in their original jurisdiction. So there's several different kind of avenues that a material could arrive directly to this board without going through the local district process. This board is kind of the ones who created the definitions and created this regulation, also are kind of that final enforcing agency.
And I think
Hopefully answers
sometimes
that
reasoning by
question.
analogy also can help. So think of this as perhaps the Supreme Court, the court of last appeal, where the Supreme Court has the opportunity to allow something to work its way up through the typical judicial process, or by issuing a writ of cert can take that case in their original jurisdiction. And so the regulation has always encompassed that language, and that was the process that was followed here. So this really is the court of last appeal, as the regulation anticipates it.
So, Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, ma'am.
are we expecting that it will start at this level from now on, or are we going to share the process that Dr. Hanley worked his committee through this time, so that they will use that same process? Is that our plan?
Yes,
So,
ma'am. So some of this,
If I could.
absolutely.
So it is certainly not our plan to go, I mean, if we wanted to review a whole bunch of books, there are lists all over the state.
Right.
I don't want to do that. That is
right.
not our intent at all.
Right.
Our intent was to try to provide some clarification to local districts. And to the degree possible, let's stay out of it until they bubble up from the bottom as.
So we will share with the school districts the process that you went through,
Correct.
so that they can use a similar process at
Correct.
that level.
Absolutely.
my
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's very important, especially to those who are listening and those that are in this room, to understand the process of how we got here. This was a proviso put in by the General Assembly. Am I correct?
No, ma'am. This was board. So this is board initiated action. Yes, ma'am.
Initially, there was no proviso put in the of which we developed regulations.
I think there was legislation
Yes.
that was moving, but the proviso you may be thinking about is the cell phone proviso that directed us to create that policy, but there was no direction by proviso.
So
for
there
this
was no
regulation.
proviso in the budget for
Correct.
for this. So this is initiated at the State Department level.
Or by the board. Yes, ma'am. This board.
So
But
we
was there
did the
legislation that was
regulation.
moving that was defeated? I think that's where the confusion is.
Yes.
Right. And I think there's been kind of a lot of confusion. So there was a piece of
Yes.
legislation far more kind of extensive
Right.
on its reach. This is a separate process that the board has set up, very kind of narrowly tailored. So I think that's kind of important. And one thing we've kind of worked to delineate as well through the agency, through guidance, this is not a bill that was kind of half done and never really kind of finished in the legislative process. This instead is a narrowly defined, narrowly tailored regulation. I think that's important to kind of remind educators the scope of this regulation is much more narrowly tailored than what was coming through the General
Yeah,
Assembly.
I think we need to better understand that process of how it came about.
Absolutely. Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I also have a
Yes,
question.
ma'am, please.
Are there any other classics that are earmarked for review that is not going to start at the school board level?
So I can't necessarily answer that. That's a board question. We just work in the direction of the board. So if there were any board members who wish to bring up any materials, that is under
We
the board's
certainly do not have a
direction.
list at this point of anticipated future reviews. That's not something that has come up at this point.
Thank you.
If there are future, if we do this again, will it come to the full board first, or will it go to the committee and they'll just do that and report back to us? Or will the board have some say of whether or not we should take this up?
This will be like any other committee, that the work is started in the committee and then it comes to the full board.
But what we're saying is there would have to be something that would come from the local level, the local district, to that committee.
Typically, that is the intent, that the majority of the work would make its way through the local wickets, and as was mentioned here earlier, that it would typically start with the classroom teacher, then the principal, then to the superintendent, the local boards, and then a parent could continue to appeal until they felt like they got relief.
All right. We do have the committee report standing as a motion. Is there then a second to move this? Oh, it doesn't require a second. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. The motion carries. All right. Thank you for legal counsel in looking at this with the dissent on certain parts of this. I'm going to defer at this point and yield my mic to you so that you can explain it better than I would.
It's just for clarification from the chair. The item on the floor was the committee's report on the consent agenda, and so for clarification, your objection would be to the items being on the consent agenda. Is that accurate? Whomever objected.
I'm fine with it being recorded that way.
And mine was only a form follows function. That was mine.
So then get clarification. Is there objection to it being on the consent agenda?
Is there then objection to it being on the consent agenda?
Yes, Board Member Slaughter.
Okay.
Board Member O'Shields.
Okay, so it'll now be placed on the South Carolina Board of Education.
All right. So this will now be placed on the South Carolina Board of Education report. Thank you very much. Again, guys, this is what we stand for as a republic, a democracy of who we are, and we are working through things. And this cannot be recorded, and this is not being talked about beforehand because we're just getting together and working through things. And however it goes, I'm going to respect the law, and I'm going to respect the rulings, and I'm going to appreciate all people for who they are, because you can disagree without being disagreeable. All right. So that is now placed on the full board item. So we would move then to educator licensure. That would then be with Ms. Kreminger.
Thank you, Chair Shields. The Educator Licensure. Thank you, Chair Shields. The Education Licensure Committee heard 11 cases today. We approved 1 public reprimand, 8 suspensions, and 1 initial certification was approved. 1 case was referred back to General Counsel for review. These matters were ratified by the full board. And a big thank you to General Counsel for all the hard work that goes into these cases. We have lots of material. There was one that was 90 pages long, and a special thank you to our committee members who take the time to read and thoroughly discuss these matters in our committee. Thank you, Chair Shields.
Thank you very much. The full Board Educator Licensure Committee met, heard 3 cases. There was 1 approval of initial certification, 1 denial of continued certification, and 1 permanent revocation of a teacher's certificate. So that would stand, and as a result, that had already been agreed and approved on. The consent agenda has been distributed. Is there a motion to approve the items that were listed?
So moved.
Thank you. Board Member Slaughter made the motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Johnson, second.
Thank you. Board Member Johnson seconded the motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries. You'll notice in item 11, we have the governance and the perpetuation of the leadership. In accordance with State Board Rule of Governance, BBAA, the chair of the State Board of Education must appoint a nominating committee of not more than 3 board members at the November board meeting to name a nominee to be the South Carolina Board of Education chair-elect for the upcoming year. The nominating committee will present its nominee to the state board during the December meeting. On October 17th, through communication, I appointed Joyce Kreminger, Cheryl Collier, and Maya Slaughter to serve as the nominations committee to bring forward a name. And on the day that I talked with Ms. Kreminger, she agreed. Ms. Collier, I'm sorry about any and all confusion. Just blame me. But Ms. Kreminger will report on the committee's nomination at the December 5th, 2024 meeting, knowing that that person would be 2 years out and that Ms. Allison will be the chair of the state board next year. So thank you very much, and that concludes that part of the nominating committee's report. All right, the South Carolina Board of Education report. We have Instructional Materials Review Committee report, again, with Dr. Hanley and Mr. Cathcart, please. Yes, and I'm sorry, out of deference to legal counsel, I'm going to defer at this moment to Mr. Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so that we're all reading from the same sheet of music here, as my, I might add at this point, rather timely parliamentarian comment on the consent agenda. Since there was objection to that, we now have 10 individual report and recommendations before the board, all of which each board member has. These are the report and recommendations that were came forth from the Instructional Material Review Committee's hearing on October 31 and were provided via email to all board members that afternoon, subsequently placed on the website and are provided for your review, hard copy in front of you. Regulation 43-170 is the uniform procedure for selection or reconsideration of instructional materials. And for purposes of this regulation, there is a definition that is important for the full board to understand, and that comes in Roman numeral 1, section C. It states, for purposes of this regulation, age and developmentally appropriate means topics, messages, materials, and teaching methods suitable to particular ages or age groups of children and adolescents based on developing cognitive, emotional, and behavioral capacity typical for the age or age group. Instructional material is not age and developmentally appropriate for any age or age group of children if it includes descriptions or visual depictions of sexual conduct, as that term is defined by South Carolina Code section 16-15-305C1. And as has already been referenced, the Instructional Material Review Committee as a mechanism of this board, has the authority, but is not required to, under Section 6B of the regulation, to, of its own volition and on its own initiative, make determinations regarding the educational suitability or the age or developmental appropriateness of specific instructional materials pursuant to the criteria and requirements of this regulation. Such determinations shall be communicated to every district board in the state and shall be conclusive and binding on all public schools, public school districts, and district boards in the state of South Carolina. So just wanted to highlight those items as I normally would for a matter coming before the board. This is the law that addresses these particular items, and in our normal course of dealing, staff will present and the chair would invite questions of the staff, but what you have before you are 10 individual reports and recommendations. And so at this point, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you to request presentation from Mr. Cathcart.
All right. Thank you very much, Council Tyler. If you would, Robert, please go.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman
sir.
and members of the Board of Education, I believe the first item you have in front of you is Damsel by Alana Arnold, unless I'm mistaken. So I believe you all have both the report and recommendation and then Exhibit A, the attachment with the staff recommendation in it. As that just contains a brief summary, I will also say staff certified that these materials actually are in South Carolina schools. So these are not just kind of materials that were brought as part of some kind of a list that wasn't in a school. These were certified that they were in a school. These excerpts were then certified by staff that they were actually in a physical copy of the material. And then also the staff recommendation here is pretty clear. The excerpts included are not age and developmentally appropriate due to descriptions of sexual conduct. And as Mr. Tyler stated, if that is the case, then they must be removed from all South Carolina public schools. I stand open for any questions y'all may have.
All right, are there any questions? All right, so we have at the request of the subcommittee, the book Damsel and its removal from from public school libraries based on the excerpts being not age and developmentally appropriate due to descriptions of sexual content. Is there a motion to adopt the subcommittee's report on this book?
Mr. Chair, I move that the full board accept the staff recommendation for removal as the excerpts are clearly violative of state law.
Okay, I do have a motion. Is there a second? All right, we have a second by Ms. Johnson. Are there any questions before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor of this book being adopting the report as presented by the subcommittee for this particular book indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to the second item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Once again, before you is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Staff repeated the same process, certified that these excerpts that are in the attachment or in the exhibit were in fact in an actual book, certified that these are available to students in high school libraries, as well as a brief summary, once again the excerpts, and it is clear once again staff's recommendation is for removal, as is highlighted in the report and recommendation, because these materials are not age and developmentally appropriate, as they contain descriptions of sexual conduct. Once again, I stand open for any questions y'all may have.
All right, any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the report from the Instructional Materials Subcommittee regarding this book, Ugly Love? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the State Board of Education accept the recommendation of staff and the report provided by the committee, and that this book be removed from South Carolina Public Schools.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Allison, second.
All right, we have Ms. Allison second. Is there any question regarding or concerns regarding this before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right. Any opposition? No. Okay. Third book.
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe the third material in front of the committee is To Kill a Mockingbird. Is that correct?
That's what I have.
Perfect. By Harper Lee. So once again, staff reviewed the entire book. There were no excerpts that were violative of the regulation or the definition of sexual conduct. I will just briefly kind of mention, as Dr. Hanley did in his report, there is it sets around a trial involving an alleged sexual assault, which actually did not happen. However, even the alleged assault occurred off stage. There's no description in the material, therefore is not violative of the regulation. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions of the council? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the report from the subcommittee regarding Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird?
Mr. Chair, I move that we, oh, go ahead. Was that? Go ahead.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the committee for To Kill a Mockingbird.
All right, we have a motion. Is there now a second?
Second, Allison, second.
All right. Is that then a vote to basically keep on shelves this particular book, Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will move on to the fourth item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the material in front of you is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Moss, unless I'm mistaken there. Once again, this book is available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. The excerpts were verified that they actually exist in a physical book, and staff recommendation here is that this book completely be removed. The excerpts are not age and developmentally appropriate because they contain descriptions of sexual conduct. Are there any questions from the committee?
All right, does anyone have any questions? All right, hearing no questions, is there a motion to adopt the report from the subcommittee regarding Sarah J. Moss's book, A Court of Frost and Starlight?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, please. I don't want to take all the time.
I make a motion that we, Allison, I make a motion that we accept the report from the Committee on A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah Moss.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Hanley, second.
Hanley has a second. Is there any discussion? All right. Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion to remove this particular book, A Court of Frost and Starlight, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any objection? All right. That would pass. There's another book by Ms. Moss, A Court of Mist and Fury.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Similar, this book was certified to be available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. Excerpts were once again certified that they actually existed in a physical form of the book. Staff's recommendation is to remove. Once again, these contain descriptions of sexual conduct and are therefore violative of the regulation for all ages in K through 12 system. Do y'all have any questions at this time?
Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, is there then a motion to adopt the report from the subcommittee
Mr. Chair.
regarding A Court of Mist and Fury?
Mr. Chair, I move that the State Board of Education accept the report of the subcommittee and to remove the book, The Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Moss.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Kriminger, second.
All right, we have Joyce Kriminger with the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any objection? All right, we got another one.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I believe before the committee is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Moss. Once again, this material is available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. The excerpts were verified in the same manner by looking at an actual physical book and ensuring there were on these pages. Staff recommendation, once again, is to remove because the excerpts included are not age and developmentally appropriate due to descriptions of sexual conduct as defined in South Carolina Code 16-15305C1.
Okay, thank you. We have a statement. Are there any questions of the attorney? The question just come up.
Yes, sir.
Book goes away from the public school library, but a child's parent could still have that child bring that book anytime he or she wants, correct?
The child can read the book in terms of kind of how the district wants to determine who can and can't bring books on. I think that's a district question.
Okay, I mean, because I'm not going to limit my parents.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
I'd indicate, so we have that. Is there a motion to adopt the report of the subcommittee?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the report of the book A Court of Thorns and Roses as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shore, for a second on that. All in favor of this indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
There's another one of these. She must have a series. I did talk with our librarian at the high school. No, I talked with our librarian at the high school. Whatever the first book is, we have it. But, you know, guys, we got to give some props to our librarians. We have one book of the however many, and our librarian didn't put it out, but had it. Our librarians are smart people, okay? Let's not forget that. They have abilities that need not be overlooked. Our next book is, again, another one. I don't even know which one it is now.
Absolutely. I believe the material before the committee is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Moss. And I will just kind of as a brief aside, I think it's important to also consider, we are considering these books individually rather than as a series. If others were to be brought up, once again, would be kind of considered individually rather than kind of as a series or kind of a blanket consideration. I think that's important for the operation of this regulation. But what I will say under this one is, once again, this is available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. The excerpts have been certified to exist in a physical form of the material, and staff recommendation, once again, is to remove either the excerpts included are not age and developmentally appropriate as they contain descriptions of sexual conduct. If y'all have any questions, I stand ready to answer.
Okay, we have heard. Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the report of the subcommittee regarding the book by Ms. Moss?
Mr. Chair, I move that the full Board of Education accept the recommendation from the staff and from the subcommittee of removing A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Moss.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Harrington. All in favor of agreeing or this recommendation indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Keep going, Mr. Cathcart.
All right, I believe the next material before the committee is 1984 by George Orwell. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so what I will say here is kind of there are some passages, some might allege to be descriptions of sexual conduct as defined by the regulation. However, those passages do not rise to the level of explanatory detail necessary to violate the regulation's clear prohibition against descriptions of sexual conduct. As previously discussed, both in Dr. Hanley's report and at the committee hearing, explanatory detail requires a passage to kind of set the scene and let someone be able to visually form a mental image of what is happening. So those who did not know what was going on in the activity mentioned would then understand what's going on, even if they had no prior context or foreknowledge. That level of detail is not present in this material, and as a result, this material does not violate the definition of age and developmentally appropriate and ought to be retained in South Carolina high schools. I'll just also kind of briefly mention, once again, staff reviewed the entire material, and this material is currently available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. If y'all have any questions, I'm open to those at this time.
Are there any questions, Mr. Cathcart?
Mr. Chair, I've got a comment.
Yes.
As I've mentioned to some others, when reading this book, and I've read it more than once, It is almost as if George Orwell anticipated the South Carolina legislature would pass their definition of sexual content, because he went right up to the line but never crossed it. It always pulled back from the line, but he did. He went very close to the line multiple times, but never actually crossed it. So that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
All right, so we have that as a comment. Is there then a motion to follow the subcommittee's position on George Orwell's 1984 remaining in the South Carolina Public Libraries?
I make the motion.
All
Mr.
right.
Chair,
Thank you very much. We have that from Mr. Richardson, but you can second.
Johnson, second.
All right, second. All in favor of having this book reinstated or put back, kept in the library, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, next book, please.
Yes, sir. I believe the next material before the board is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Once again, you see kind of a brief summary. Once again, staff reviewed the entire material. This is made available to students in South Carolina middle and high school libraries. Though, once again, kind of the material talks about a romantic relationship and never rises to the level of explanatory detail. And therefore, staff's recommendation is to retain this material as it is age and developmentally appropriate for South Carolina students. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer your questions.
So that's the first time you specifically said it was available to junior high school students, but not available to elementary school.
As far as kind of staff has certified, there may be some examples, but I think primarily it seems to be kind of in middle and high schools.
So there are ways for the local committees to discern whether something's appropriate for elementary school teacher or not appropriate for the elementary school, and then appropriate for junior high or high school?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And that would then be left to the district's discretion.
Right, unless the district made a decision, that decision were appealed to this board. So the board could make that decision. That's not staff's recommendation at this time.
Okay. All right, so at this juncture, we have Romeo and Juliet. The subcommittee requested the continued use of this subject matter to be in local school districts. Excuse me, I've got to have a motion. Motion first. Do I have a motion to keep Romeo and Juliet in the school library?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Is there a second?
Kriminger, second.
Kriminger, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Next book.
All right, I believe the last material in front of this committee is Normal People by Sally Rooney. Once again, staff reviewed the material, confirmed that these passages were in fact in a physical copy of the material. This material, once again, is available to students in South Carolina high school libraries. From the excerpts presented, staff's recommendation is to remove, I believe that's also in the report and recommendation from the committee, as the excerpts are not age and developmentally appropriate due to descriptions of sexual conduct as outlined and defined in South Carolina Code 16-15-305C1. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
All right, are there any questions? Therefore, is there a motion for the removal of the book Normal People by Sally Rooney from the full board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the book Normal People by Sally Rooney, that we approve the recommendation as made by the committee.
All right, so it has been approved, and we reaffirm that based on the motion that you have. Is there a second?
Mathis, second.
Mathis seconds. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much for doing that. I do want to, I sometimes blur the lines between state board, district board, state superintendent, district superintendent. I would strongly encourage that we follow Ms. Lynn's approach and allow this to be a bottoms-up approach. If you want to prime the pump at whatever we're doing, but I am telling you, it was not by accident that the Holy Roman Empire stayed in existence from 1800 to 1804. They did so through a premise called subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is rule at the local level. And they were thousands of different principalities. That's all I'll say. I have one more meeting as chair, and then I'm out of that one. All right, we now have to go through the State Board of Education report for approval. We've done that one. Safe Schools Facility, I'm sorry. Okay, Instructional Materials Review Committee report, I'm sorry. Again. Well, you pointed to one.
Your agenda's different than mine, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, now I'm back to where I wanted to be. Safe Schools Facility Grant. All right. All right, proposed amendments, Regulation 43-262, I guess, for approval, the Safe Schools Facility Grant money from Laura Bain as it related to the monies that would be appropriated based on the report that we had received. No report there?
Yes, sir.
'Cause we're
Before
gonna
you
expend
have,
money.
I'm sorry?
We're going to expend money, so I just
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to get
Yes, sir.
verification.
So in accordance with the funds given under Proviso 1.78, which allowed for up to $20 million to be allocated to school districts for upgrades to their facility infrastructure and other allowable costs, we presented a report of how we recommend those funds be allocated. We partnered, and by we, I mean Bubba and Robert, partnered with SLED to review every application from every district, and those went to the superintendent for her review and approval. And now we ask for yours, pending your
Right.
questions.
Are there any questions? I want to say, and I'll say it again, where are both of them? Oh, they're over there. These two men are doing incredible work, working to keep the schools and districts safe. If there is one thing I can truly be most appreciative for, it's Ms. Weaver's recognition of safety, their implementation of it, and our appreciation as districts for receiving funds to continuously help us. And to the two of you, and to your crew, and to all the people, to Ellen's vision of making schools safe, I do say thank you. So is there a motion to approve Safe Schools Facility Grant? All right, Ms. Allison makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Kriminger, second.
Kriminger seconds. All in favor of the Safe Schools Facility Grant money being expended as noted, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very, very much. And now our third one is proposed amendments to Regulation 43-262 as it relates to the assessment program. Dr. Christy Austin.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. This was a little surprise. This is all new to me, but
Don't worry, it's new every day.
So we are making a proposal to change the regulation, to change the outdated language. One of the pieces is that it denotes the No Child Left Behind Act, which is not our prevailing federal legislation now. So to change it to Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, and also include the language or prevailing legislation, so that if it is changed in the future, we would not have to have another regulation change. And then the second piece to this amendment is to change SC Pass to the current test, summative test for grades 3 through 8, which is SC Ready, or the comparable test, so that if we change the name of the test in the future, we do not have to have a regulation change.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I do appreciate that. And
Yeah.
that changes about as quickly as diapers. So is there a motion to approve the amendment to Regulation 43-262?
Mathis moves to approve.
Thank you, Mathis approves. Is there a second?
Second. Slaughter.
Slaughter, second. Thank you. All in favor of this more open language to where it just doesn't change every time. Thank you very much. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. At this time, I would like to recognize Rita Allison, Chair-elect for the South Carolina State School Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has to do with our State Board of Education meeting dates for 2025, which is coming up very quickly. Each of you here today should have received a copy of our 2025 dates. If you have not, if you will see Tracy afterwards, she'll be glad to give you one. And if there's anyone attending virtually today, those dates are linked on the State Board of Education's page. Please note that the board will not meet during the month of July. However, depending on any legislative and/or educational issues that may arise, we may need to meet in July, and that would be a special called meeting for all of us. Also of note, there are no holidays on the first Tuesday in 2025 in that year, unlike today, which I would hope that everyone on this board and everyone in the audience has voted today before you leave. Your attendance is optional, board, to welcome for the South Carolina Read-In, which is at the State House in April. All of you will be invited and are invited to that, and also to the South Carolina Teacher of the Year banquet, which is in May. Hope all of you can attend both.
Thank you very much. See how much more eloquent she is. All right. Did you hear that, man? He said second. All right. Academic updates. Dr. Matthew Ferguson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know I stand between you and voting and maybe going home, but I have been accused of being maniacally focused on student outcomes, and I accept that. And so I appreciate all of you staying with me, because I think what I am about to share is some of the most important presentations that you will receive today, because we get to share the results of the school report cards from last academic year. I want to highlight some success from the Hope Network districts that the Department of Education has partnered with. And then Superintendent Weaver has already shared the specific insights from Pinecrest, but I just want to put an exclamation point on the wonderful work that Greenwood 50 is doing as a whole, but specifically at Pinecrest Elementary. So what you see on your screen here is the report card ratings by school. And as all of you likely know, each school in South Carolina receives an overall report card rating based on a 100-point scale. And these report card ratings include several different criteria, to include academic achievement, so how many students are meeting and exceeding standards in English language arts or math. The student progress indicator, which looks at how much a student grows from the assessment last year to the assessment that they take at the end of the year. So we're looking at academic achievement, but also how much students are growing within a given year. It also looks at graduation rate. It looks at climate. South Carolina is actually one of the very few, I think only states that includes the perceptions of student climate in its report card ratings, and also teachers' perceptions of climate in their report card ratings. So both students and teacher voices are represented in our report card ratings. And what you'll see as a comparison between 2024 and 2023 is that we have fewer schools that are rated unsatisfactory, but we have fewer schools that are also rated excellent. And what you see is a regression towards the mean in the 2024 report card ratings. And I think one reason for that you should all be aware of is that we have moved towards a criterion-based student progress indicator. So it's not just, did I grow more than the students beside me or more than the students in other parts of the state, but the progress indicator now looks and says, did I make enough growth that moves me towards proficiency, because proficiency is the goal, because we know that all students can meet or exceed standards if they are provided with the resources and the supports to get there. And so this is an opportunity for us to recognize where things are going well, but it's also a motivation for us to take an honest assessment of where we are and have clarity about where all students can be. And so there's certainly work to be done. But I wanted to take a few moments to update this board on the work in our Hope Network districts. And so, as you may know, Article 16 defines what an unsatisfactory school district is, and that is defined by state statute as a school district that has 65% or more of its schools with an overall rating of unsatisfactory or below average. And if a school district is, for 3 consecutive years, found to be unsatisfactory, they get the designation as a chronically underperforming school district, and those school districts have the potential to be taken over by the state for additional support. And so we had 3 school districts, and I'm going to start at the bottom of this slide. We had 3 school districts that were in year 2 last year. So Colleton, Jasper, and McCormick. If their report cards had not looked better this year, the state could have chosen to intervene and take over local management of those school districts. But all 3 of those school districts really partnered with the department over this past year, and they worked with department staff and really got clear and focused on the mission of student achievement. And Colleton, Jasper, and McCormick, I am pleased to say, neither of those school districts are any longer identified as an underperforming school district. So that is quite an accomplishment. So I'm going to start with Colleton. Colleton had 3 schools that improved 1 rating. It had 1 school that improved 2 overall ratings. And Jasper County, it has all of its students' progress ratings as either excellent or good. And McCormick only has 3 schools, y'all. And one of their schools improved 2 overall ratings. One of its schools improved 1 overall rating. And Superintendent Jamie, I'm blanking on Jamie's last, Hembry, there we go. Superintendent Hembry reached out and said that the report card ratings in McCormick are the highest that they have seen since 2010. And so that really speaks to the hard work that those districts did this past year, but it also, I think, set them and focused them on the work that is still yet to come, because I think all of them realize that they made improvements, but they are not yet there. And so the department will continue to partner with them and support them, but they are well on their way to really changing the outcomes for kids in those districts. To move to Williamsburg and Allendale, which is the school districts currently under state control, Williamsburg has no school district or no schools with an overall rating of unsatisfactory or below average.
Good. And I think it should be mentioned that of the 76 or so school districts that we have, only 26 of those districts have no schools unsatisfactory or below average, because we is one of them, and we taking our averages and being very happy with them too.
Yes, sir. And, you know, in Williamsburg as well, looking at the academic reports, the academic ratings, they also have no schools with an academic rating of unsatisfactory. 4 of their schools improved an overall rating. No school in Williamsburg County dropped a rating this past year. So they've really made notable progress, and as a result, the department has began the process of removing state control, and this year will be a bridge towards local control in Williamsburg. So that board is now meeting. They are taking votes. They are making recommendations to the State Department for ratification. If the success that Williamsburg had last year continues, the conversation around a full return to local control will occur next year after the report cards are released. And then finally, Allendale. I don't want to leave Allendale out, because Allendale is also making positive strides. It had it is another school district that has 3 schools in it. It had a school that improved in overall rating, and it also made great improvement in its student growth indicators. And so if Allendale continues on the same track that it started this past year, it will likely be in a similar situation as Williamsburg this year. So there is a lot of positive movement and momentum in school districts across the state. And y'all, if I'm just being honest, I'm much better with bad news than I am good news. So when they first gave me this, I was like, no, that's probably not right. Y'all go back and check that again. But I think it speaks to the hard work that the folks in those districts are doing, the work that the district transformation coaches in that office have done this past year to really provide clarity of mission. We have to be focused on student outcomes. We have to believe that students can actually achieve the standards that the state has set. And then how do we align resources and time to make sure that we are seeing that type of achievement? And so that brings us back to Pinecrest. Superintendent Weaver had much prettier graphs than I did, but I just grabbed these from the student report cards. And so I just want you to look at that for a second, because in a school that has 87% poverty, and Superintendent Weaver, this board, and the Education Oversight Committee have all adopted a vision and a mission that by 2030, 75% of students will be meeting or achieving standards. I think Pinecrest Elementary is a place in South Carolina where we see that is not only possible, it's already happening. And so the students at Pinecrest Elementary, if we look just at their report card last year, their third grade students, only about 44% of them were meeting standard. This year, 76% of their third graders are meeting standard in ELA. That is remarkable, remarkable achievement. And what we also see is that their pupils in poverty, their African American students, and even their multilingual students are often outscoring and outperforming the all students category across the state. And so I don't know what the secret sauce of Mr. Jacks is, or of Dr. Glenn in Greenwood 50, but what he will say is that it is people and time, and you've got to have clarity of mission, and you've got to align resources to support that mission. So I think they need to be celebrated. There are many places across South Carolina that are achieving great things, and there are some places where these report cards are a kick in the gut, but next week they've got to use it as a motivation to do the right things for kids and be focused on what really matters. So thank y'all for indulging me so that I could share that good news of what's happening in schools in the state. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
And
Mr. Chair,
again.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the state provide any help for those schools that are unsatisfactory?
Yes, ma'am. So those notifications actually went out yesterday. They are notified that they are an unsatisfactory school. There are requirements that the unsatisfactory schools have to create a plan in partnership with their school improvement council. That plan has to be approved by the state board, not the state board, by their local board, and then it's forwarded to the state. Often those schools are also designated through one of the federal designations, which comes with additional funding in many cases, and there's also coaching support at the most underperforming schools, where we send in usually a former retired principal that really helps the principal in that school focus on student outcomes.
And I will say, too, as a department, the focus on the fundamentals message around the Palmetto Literacy Project, which started under Dr. Mathis's leadership here, we are now expanding that into the Palmetto Math Project, where we will go into schools that have the lowest performing percentages across the state and do specific triage around those subject areas.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to add one thing. I get the opportunity, I'm one of the newest people on the board, and I get the opportunity to come up here, and I hear all these great things, and I know we're making progress. But I would like to say that in my district, Horry County, we had the #1 high school in South Carolina this year. And Scholars Academy, I did want to just mention that.
Congratulations. Y'all must be getting tired.
Mr. Chair, I know we got to go.
No, you're fine.
I would be remiss because I represent Circuit 3, which is Lee, Sumter, Clarendon, and Williamsburg County. And ever since I've been here, I've been waiting to hear some great news. And I'm so grateful to Superintendent Weaver and, gosh, Matt, thank you all for all that you have done. And Dr. Kelvin Williams is so excited. He be shooting data out to me all the time. And he says, anytime any of you want to see great teaching, and I know you like to see great teaching, Superintendent Weaver, come to Williamsburg County, where you can see little first graders tell you the parts of speech and talk to you about things. I didn't have a clue what onset and rhyme was. I had to go look it up. I mean, they are just phenomenal. So thank you. Thank you for what you've done for them.
Thank you very much. Again, that's what it's all about. And I do think, as you talked about the secret in the sauce, you mentioned it with our principal at Pinecrest. You know, it's, as you said, it's putting the time into what you inspect, expect, and provide leadership along those ways. In other business, do any of our board members have anything to share for the good of the order?
Just to bring some reality to the report, we actually have more schools in 2024 that are below average than we had in 2023.
We do, but the thought on that for me is they have fewer unsatisfactory. So to me, the trend is moving. For me personally, I'm looking at trend analysis. And they had to go somewhere, and they didn't stay where they were.
That's right.
Yes, sir. As a great philosopher said, we have a long way to go and a short time to get there, right?
Jerry Reed. All right. Hearing none, please be reminded, state board members, if you have not turned in your travel form, please give that signed form to Tracy before you leave. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mathis, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Frierson?
Frierson.
All right, and all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.